Hello, everybody, and today for Family Guy, I'm reviewing Playtime and Phony Madonna. So, this episode is where the Griffins decide to do a play to save a theater from being shut down, and we get free spoofs in this episode. So this episode kind of hits home for me since I literally do theater myself, and it felt so relatable seeing all the Family Guy characters go up on stage. But each of them are like parodies of like various folklore. I don't know how to describe it, but they do a parody of To Kill a Mockingbird, where we see a bird that is trying to hang out with Brian and Stewie while on stage, while Peter is a father and Meg's a daughter at some old family cottage, but the bird ends up getting killed by Brian, and even the parents are watching thinking it's just an act, and that scene was graphic. I felt so bad for the bird, even though that it is part of the story, but not actually killing the mockingbird. But there's a bunch of wild scenes in this where the Griffins try to read the various lines and try to make up their own lines throughout the whole show. And Lois is, I think, it's like the presenter of all the shows. She like comes out on stage and somehow she's able to quickly switch costumes. But I think like one of the other ones they do is it takes place in England, but we see Peter Griffin as like an old king, and Chris is like the main prince character, and of course he has to kiss Lois in this scene on the hand, and it was just like, it was definitely something else, but all the characters pretty much have their costumes except for Cleveland. He ends up having to put on a football jersey, which I thought was funny since he couldn't even find anything else that matched all the characters' uniforms. But probably the best part of this episode is seeing the various scene changes that look like a stage play. That's probably my favorite aspect about this episode. It was definitely like another one of these parody episodes where they take a story and then they just Family Guy-ify it. I don't know how to say it like that, but probably the wildest scene is where we see Carter Peterschmidt on stage, and he ends up getting beaten up to death by Chris, which I thought was wild. I thought he wasn't going to make it, but nah, he's fine. But this episode was definitely interesting for sure, but the next episode is probably another infamous episode where we see Brian try to go out on a date with a lady that after going to some, I think it's like a festival for immigrants, but of course Peter ain't really a fan of it. It's kind of like making fun of our current situation right now in the world, where it's a whole other topic in itself. But Brian ends up dating a girl, but originally she doesn't want to at first, after her boyfriend is trying to date her, but he ends up getting catched by the infamous Ice. Yeah, you already know I don't like Ice. But I like how Family Guy is trying to call out the wrongdoings in our world right now. That's what I like to see. Protest is what I like to see from it. And people love to say Family Guy is trying to pick sides on the political spectrum. I'm pretty sure Seth MacFarlane is not on the side that you think. I'm pretty sure Family Guy just makes fun of everything, kind of just like South Park. But the whole plot of this episode is where Brian accidentally gets hit while hanging out with Stewie, but he, of course, loses his voice, and now he sounds like a completely different dog. But he tries to go on a date after being released from the hospital, but Stewie tries to pretend that he didn't lose his voice. But during all this, Brian tries to do everything to torment the Griffins. He ends up being mean to Chris after he tries to tell them to be quiet. But probably my favorite scene in this whole episode that actually made me laugh was we saw the return of No, 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 no. It's where Brian ends up pulling out a bunch of machine guns on Cleveland, and he shoots his house down. And, of course, he's in the bathtub, and he crashes. And it's nice to see that joke return. It's been a while since we've seen Cleveland do that joke. But during the subplot of this episode, I think it's where Peter and Lois try to go on a date with some rich couple, but of course they don't really want to hang out with them at all, but they think they're just there just to make out, but instead they end up just making out on the couch, and even though they thought their friends were weird, they just ended up just embarrassing them, and they of course get kicked out, of course. But Brian and Stewie end up going to hit the girlfriend's wedding. But there's also a reference to Jenna Ortega, which immediately caught my attention once Brian was told that she was going to be there. But we don't see Jenna Ortega at all, since we know Jenna probably would not voice a character in this show. But it would have been cool to see a character model of what Jenna would look like in Family Guy. Honestly, I could just draw one myself. But of course, Brian has to use a voice modulator to disguise his voice for the audience, but of course it ends up screwing up, and he ends up just talking in the voices that he's worried the people there are going to make fun of him or not like what he said, but of course he does, and he ends up becoming a jerk, and of course the girlfriend ends up breaking up with him, and the family goes back to the way they are, but it ends with Brian not wanting to see the video of what he did. But these two episodes were definitely hilarious for sure. It was kind of refreshing to see some just different styles for Family Guy. It was definitely just a regular episode for sure. But they also announced the Stewie show. I might as well give my thoughts on that. I'm not really sure about the Stewie show, since he's kind of just a main character in this show. He gets his own plots. I know it's mainly about the Griffins as a whole, but wonder what could they do with Stewie. I guess we're going to see a lot more time travel episodes. Maybe that could be fun, since the best episodes are honestly with Brian and Stewie. So I guess we'll be on the lookout for that. And maybe me and Little Blue will review the Stewie show. So be on the lookout for that for the future of the channel. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time. And that's nasty.